Abu Ubaida delivers a speech from the embers onto the heads of the Israelis. O graduates of the ghettos, reminder is a heavy history on the souls of the Jews. Thousands of tweets and posts on social media wonder about the spokesperson for the Al-Qassam Brigade's intentions. What are the ghettos and what is their connection to the Jews? Europeans isolated Jews in a separate area, later known as the Jewish Quarter, which spread in Europe and some Arab countries before the establishment of the State of Israel. It aimed to isolate Jews, facilitate the looting of their belongings, and exploit them in forced labor. Most of these ghettos were established in impoverished neighborhoods or densely populated Jewish neighborhoods, many surrounded by walls or fences to cut off contact with the outside world. These ghettos were not only material and geographical communities but also cultural and social ones, with their own language, a mix of Hebrew and medieval German, Slavic components, and writing in Hebrew letters. The word ghetto comes from the Italian language, meaning an isolated neighborhood or a confined area. The first ghetto was established in Venice in 1516, where Jews were gathered and forced to live in a separate neighborhood away from the rest of the population, prohibited from living outside the ghetto or the designated Jewish quarter. This idea spread to European cities and was implemented during World War II, with Jews continuing to live this way until the establishment of the State of Israel, when they left the ghettos scattered in European cities for the land of Palestine to establish their entity. This entity appears as a large ghetto surrounded by walls due to the neighboring people's rejection of them. In the 16th and 17th centuries, many leaders like Emperor Charles V began establishing Jewish neighborhoods in cities such as Frankfurt, Rome, and Prague to isolate Jews and determine their place of residence. Over time, the meaning of the word ghetto evolved to include the concept of social isolation. Jewish ghettos became just a part of the broader concept of the ghetto, where the word is now used to refer to any isolated area or group of people regardless of their roots. Due to this heavy Jewish history, Abu Ubaida describes the Israelis as graduates of the ghetto. Through this historical recall, Abu Ubaida suggests that Israeli practices create an environment similar to the old ghettos, isolating Palestinians in their land and restricting their freedom and rights. The Jews under control. After Germany invaded Poland in 1939, more than 2 million Polish Jews came under German control. Following Germany's invasion of the Soviet Union in June 1941, millions of other Jews also fell under Nazi rule. The Germans sought to control this large Jewish population by forcing them to reside in separate quarters in cities or towns, known as ghettos. The Germans established at least 1,000 ghettos in the areas they occupied, with the largest one in Warsaw, where 500,000 Jews were confined. Jews from surrounding areas and Eastern Europe were also brought to live in the Jewish quarter. Between October and December 1941, thousands of German and Austrian Jews were transported to ghettos in Eastern Europe. Germans typically designated the oldest and most demolished streets in cities to create ghettos. Sometimes, they had to evict non-Jewish residents from buildings to provide space for Jewish families. Most Jewish neighborhoods were surrounded by walls or barbed wire fences, with entrances guarded by local and German police and special forces. A curfew was imposed in the evening, and Jews were forced to stay inside their homes. In Polish cities, a transport line guarded by police passed through the middle of Jewish neighborhoods to prevent Jews from escaping on the transport vehicles. Travelers from outside the Jewish neighborhoods used cars to go to work on weekdays, and some used them on Sundays for outings, mocking the residents of the Jewish neighborhoods. The Nazi authorities imposed distinctive signs or badges on Jews and forced many of them to perform humiliating tasks as a form of persecution and brutality. During that time, the Germans banned all forms of education and enlightenment in Jewish neighborhoods. At the end of 1941, coinciding with the implementation of the Final Solution Plan to exterminate all European Jews, German forces systematically destroyed Jewish ghettos. Methods used in these operations included shooting residents of the ghettos and burying them in mass graves or deporting them by trains to designated killing areas. The Warsaw Ghetto was the largest Jewish quarter in Poland, housing 400,000 Jews in an area of 1 square mile. Residents of the ghettos in Germany suffered extremely poor health conditions, with famines and deadly diseases spreading, especially when authorities tightened control over movements in and out of the ghettos. Despite these physical and life pressures, Jews worked hard to organize their educational, social, and religious lives within the ghettos under limited conditions. Some organized revolutionary movements and uprisings within the ghettos. The Warsaw Ghetto Uprising in 1943 was one of the most prominent of these uprisings, ending with the complete burning of the ghetto by the Germans. Although ghettos were abolished after that time, Abu Ubaida revives their memory to emphasize that the ghetto's horrors remain a tragic symbol in the language of oppressed peoples. He suggests that the Palestinian people now endure the same suffering that the Jews experienced in the past, turning the history of the ghettos into a historical lesson to reinforce the message of justice and freedom for oppressed nations.